I live in a small village near Tunbridge Wells in Kent, England. On one side of our village is a vast forest that has parts that are very thick with trees and some parts that are large clearings. I usually walk there on the weekends, as it is a relaxing and calming place for me. But that changed. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was doing my usual route through the woods when I came upon lots of pieces of paper, all scattered in a specific area. There wasn't a breeze, so the pieces of paper hadn't blown off. There must have been about 50 pieces of paper, all with the same phrase on it, bringing you the laugh. I didn't really think much of it and took a photo of it as a joke. I kept on walking, and 5 minutes later I came across another pile, all with the same phrase, bringing you the laugh. I took another picture and decided I would report it to the non-emergency number when I got home. When I looked up from taking a picture, I saw a bright flash of color in the tree line. I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" Nothing. I called out again, "Hello?" Again, nothing. I was thinking I was seeing things, but when I moved on, I was cautious. Then, all of a sudden, a clown jumped out from behind a tree. He had a latex mask that covered his head and was wearing a bright yellow, purple, and red jumpsuit covered in blue polka dots. His mouth was revealed on the mask, and he grinned at me. To be honest, I was expecting him to have crooked yellow teeth, and I was surprised when he flashed perfect bright white ones at me. I was a bit taken aback and stuttered out, "Who are you?" He giggled and said in a sing-song voice, "I'm Honky the Clown. I'm your best friend." He kept asking me questions about where I lived, what my name was, and if I locked my doors at night. I was kind of annoyed now and said firmly, "This isn't funny. Leave me alone." He stopped grinning. "Not funny," he said in an upset voice. "Not funny." He kept repeating those two words, but he got more angry every time he said it. After the fifth repetition of the words, he was practically spitting with fuming anger. He then took a kitchen knife out of his back pocket. He lunged at me, and I dodged out of the way, but not fast enough. I didn't see him cut me, but I looked at my arm and saw a long, thin line appear on my skin, oozing blood. I let out a yelp, took one last look at him, and sprinted away. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to get away. Nothing happened after that. I ran out of the woods, back home, and I called the police instantly. I had completely forgot about my arm, and it was covered in blood by the time the police got to my house, and they sent for an ambulance. I took them to the place the clown was, but he was gone, and so was the paper. I haven't seen him since. Now, weeks later, I feel safe to share this. The police investigated for a few days, asked a few questions, but were gone soon after. I still look over my shoulder, as if the clown will be there, watching me, holding a knife. It all started on a Saturday night at 9 p.m. I was walking home from my friend's house. At the time, I was 14 years old. I had to walk by a bushy, wooded area, but it wasn't that bad since my friend only lived 30 minutes away. I didn't mind the walk. As I was walking, I had the unsettling feeling that I was being watched. I felt scared for a moment, but continued on my way. Then, I heard footsteps. I thought it might be an animal. I knew that there had been reports of clowns around, but I lived in a pretty nice area, and so did my friend. I wouldn't have thought there would be a clown in the area. However, the feeling of unease grew stronger, so I turned my flashlight on even brighter. I turned around and spotted the clown. It was wearing a brightly striped patterned shirt with baggy pants. Terrified, I started to sprint. The clown chased after me, calling out, "Hey, where are you going? I just want to play with you." I was creeped out even more. I ran for about 20 minutes. When I was only 10 minutes away from home, I looked back, but didn't see anything or anyone. I continued to walk, tired and exhausted, out of breath. The 5 minutes that followed seemed like 4 hours, but I finally made it home. I locked the door and kept my mouth shut. I didn't plan on telling my mom because I knew she wouldn't believe me. I went up to my room on the second floor, still scared. I climbed onto my bed and went on my phone. Soon after, I fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of tapping on the window. I knew exactly who it was. I looked to the corner of my room and saw a mug. I opened my window a bit and whispered, "Hey, you freak. Get lost before I throw this at you." He didn't say anything. He just stared at me blankly. I closed my window and laid in bed, rethinking why I had said that. Then I heard banging at our front door. Bang! 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 This time, I was frozen with fear. I finally gathered the courage to get up and went to my mom's room. I told her what I saw, but not what I said. She told me she'd go look. When she checked, she didn't see anything at my window. She said, "Maybe you're seeing things. Maybe you watched a horror movie at your friend's house." I didn't say anything and just went back to bed. I woke up again to the sound of something at my room door. I thought it was the clown. This time, it was my mom. She said she heard a loud bang at our house door, looked out, and called the cops. She said she wished she had believed me before. The cops didn't find the clown, even after searching our yard and the surrounding area. They left after their search. I haven't seen any other clowns since that night, although my mom got an email saying they had caught a man in a clown suit matching the description I gave. Last year, just a few days before Halloween, my friends and I were hanging out. After playing tabletop and video games for a while, we decided to go outside for some night games. My friend's little brother wanted to join us, but we said no, which, in hindsight, was a good decision. After an hour of playing generic games, we decided to play Fugitive. For those who don't know, Fugitive involves two teams. One team hides and tries to make it back to a designated safe zone undetected, while the other team tries to tag them. The 6 of us split into 2 teams. My team, which included me and 2 friends, was supposed to hide. One friend hid in a Halloween decoration casket near the safe zone, while the other friend and I went off to hide on the porch, under a bench of one of the Seekers. We waited for about 10 minutes before deciding to head to the safe zone, which was just down the street. As we snuck down, we saw our friend sitting at the safe zone in front of his house. We went over and started talking while waiting for the Seekers. Suddenly, an old car with chipped white paint pulled up to the house. My friend thought it was his sister's friend dropping her off, but no one got out of the car. After 5 minutes, the car doors opened, and 2 men, each about 6 feet tall and dressed in black, except for white clown masks, emerged. We tried to play it cool, saying things like, "Hey, what's up?" and "What's going on?" As they walked toward us, they just kept staring. One of the clowns started growling like a creepy animal, while the other said things like, "You teens shouldn't be out this late," and "You really should be more careful," in a monotone voice. My friend asked to take a picture of them, but when the flash went off, the clown jerked his head, and all we got was a shot of his left eye and forehead. Trying to diffuse the tension, I did something stupid. I offered the growling clown a cough drop, saying, "You must have a raspy throat." He grabbed my hand, but I managed to wriggle free. He then threw the cough drop on the ground. Realizing these guys weren't afraid to get physical, our fear intensified. I looked for an escape route behind us. I planned to kick one of them and run, but I was too petrified to act. Instead, I stammered, You guys should just go, please." They slowly walked backward, staring at us the entire way to their car before speeding off. We were all terrified. And just then, the Seekers came around the corner. We ran to them and told them what happened. Initially skeptical, they soon realized from our eyes that we were telling the truth. We went to our friend's house and told his dad, but he laughed it off. So we went to another friend's house, and he offered to drive us all home. As we crossed the overpass, we saw the same car driving on the other side. I hid, petrified they might recognize me. Later that night, my friend called to say his mom had reported the incident to the cops, who might contact me. That night, I heard a car pull up outside my house. It was the same car. The passenger window story was told to me by my best friend way years ago while we were having tea at a roadside stall. I never told anyone about that India. I kept thinking, according to my friend, what if I didn't get my the incident happened to one of his distant cousins? What if we let his little brother was a civil servant, posted even if they were just pranksters? It scared the hell out of me. The cousin's parents were murdered in a macabre manner, yet the case remains unsolved to this day. The year was 1986. In the sleepy town of Nanded, in western India, an incident occurred that shook the entire community. It was September, and a 3-year-old boy was sleeping with his mother in their bedroom. His father slept in another room where he also worked. Around 2:30 a.m., the toddler suddenly woke up to a strange sound. As the child would later describe, it was akin to soft flesh smacking against a hard object. To the child, it sounded like chat, chat, chat. The bedroom door was open and faced a long corridor. The child sat up in bed. Despite his age, his hackles rose as the bizarre chat, chat sound came closer and closer. His heart pounded like a piston as the sound grew louder. Then he saw it. Right outside the bedroom, facing the open door, was a giant starfish-like creature, greenish in color, with a large, gaping maw in its center. The creature climbed along the wall, making the unsettling chat, chat sound with every movement. The creature stopped for a second, then glided into the bedroom and climbed onto the ceiling. Petrified with fear, the child tried to wake his mother by shaking her but uttered no sound. So terrified was he. After what seemed like an eternity, the child's mother finally woke up, annoyed at being disturbed in the middle of the night. When she testily asked her son what he wanted, the terrified toddler simply pointed at the ceiling. When the mother looked up with exasperation, her expression quickly turned to blood-curdling terror. The next morning, when the milkman came to deliver the milk, he found the child sitting mutely on the stairs outside the house. When asked, the boy simply pointed towards the open main door. Inside, the milkman saw a trail of blood leading to the bedroom, where he found the headless corpses of the child's parents. Terrified, the milkman called the neighbors, who then contacted the police. The child was extensively questioned, but no one believed his account of a giant starfish-like monster eating his parents' heads. A local newspaper got hold of the story and dubbed the supposed monster Chatka, inspired by the chat, chat sound it made while moving. The case was never solved. The child's grandparents took him back to their hometown, where he underwent years of therapy, but to no avail. The story doesn't end there. According to my friend, his cousin tried to lead a normal life, but the childhood trauma always haunted him. He eventually got admitted to an engineering college. However, a month after his admission, his headless corpse was found in his hostel room. Subsequent investigations showed no signs of anyone entering the room. This case too remains unsolved to this day. I'm not sure where else to post this, but I live on a native reserve called Aquesasne. I don't know if it's well known or not. but a quick Google search will tell you the basics. So let's get into this. I once went out on the boat with my father, his sister, her kids, and their father on the St. Lawrence River. There's an urban legend about the seaweed at the bottom of that river. It's said that bad men would be dragged under by creatures that disguise themselves as the rest of the weeds. On this outing, I jumped into the river alone. I was around 10 years old, and it wasn't uncommon for me to swim alone. When I jumped in, I remember looking down at the bottom of the river. The weeds were about 50 feet below me, pretty far down for a river. As I swam back up to the surface, I felt something grab my leg. I looked down, and it was the weeds, one strand wrapped around my right ankle. I remember the light fading away, and then I blacked out. When I came to, my uncle was giving me CPR, and my father was crying in his sister's arms. He was scared of losing me, as we had lost my older sister when I was 3. That's all I remember of that day. No one talks about trauma here, because it's considered to all be in our heads. Another incident, which didn't happen to me but to one of my uncles, involved him being out in the rain. He saw a literal giant snakehead, and he hit it. This thing was impossibly huge, bigger than a car. Needless to say, I never swim alone anymore, and he doesn't go on the river in the rain. If you're from a big family, you're probably familiar with the fabled family reunion, a time during a set holiday when relatives, often detached from the core family, come together. These reunions typically involve a big feast at a neutral location that can accommodate everyone and has the facilities for cooking. For us, this gathering took place at an old building that used to be a school long ago. It had maybe 5 classrooms and was located in Selma. Every year, without fail, my family would cram into our Dodge van and make the near pilgrimage to this old building for Thanksgiving. However, the story I want to share doesn't take place there. Instead, it happens across the street from my Aunt Faye's home. Once the food was served and the elders said their respective graces, those who didn't have to travel out of state, and some who did, would return to Aunt Faye's home for a more relaxed version of the reunion. One evening, my Uncle Bobby walked in from having a smoke. But something seemed off this time. Bobby, like my father, had served in the military, so seeing him uneasy was strange. Both he and Dad seemed afflicted by something. Being the curious kid I was, I began to pester them until my uncle took me aside and pointed across the street to a house that had been there since he and Dad were kids. We were never allowed near this place. The one time I did as a child, I had trouble sitting for a week afterward. So when he told me that he, Dad, their younger brother, Tom, and my cousin Victor were going over there, I volunteered to join them. Urban legends surrounded this property. Some claimed it was a secret meeting spot for a satanic cult, while others said it was the home of a known witch who had been run out of town. What I saw in that house changed me. It was a classic 1950 style 2-story southern home. The stairs to the second floor were somewhat hidden behind a wall, which struck me as odd. Various images were spray painted on the walls. At least, I hoped it was paint. There were strange small bottles with glass corks, like something from an old Western movie. What scared me most was in the kitchen. There was a pentagram with several flayed carcasses displayed inside the design. They seemed only a day or so old. Coupled with the sound of footsteps outside, this made everyone want to leave. Everyone but my dad. For some reason, Dad wanted to go to the basement, or in this case, the fruit cellar. The look in his eyes that day, focus mixed with fear, was unforgettable. Seeing the man I thought was nearly invincible become literally shaken was a revelation. When we reached the basement, it seemed recently lived in. There were open cans of food, several mats, a single propane heater, and a pile of bones, hopefully chicken bones, neatly stacked next to one of the mats. And then there was a book. I know I shouldn't have taken it, but curiosity got the better of me. Years later, I found out that a cult had been based in Selma around that time. They used to break into farms and steal small livestock for their rituals. But one member went rogue and started abducting people. The woman, known as the Wicked Witch of the East, was never caught, though 2 of her associates were apprehended. Camping had always been my escape. The solitude of nature, the crackling campfire, the whisper of the wind through the trees. It was my sanctuary. So, when life in the city became too much, I packed my gear and headed for Blackwood Forest, a place I'd never been but had heard much about. Nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, it promised isolation and peace. I arrived in the late afternoon, setting up camp near a small clearing by a creek. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced and flickered in the firelight. As the darkness settled in, an eerie stillness took over the forest, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl. I was roasting marshmallows, enjoying the serenity, when I first sensed it, something watching me from the darkness. The feeling was so intense that I froze, marshmallow forgotten, and peered into the trees. There was nothing but darkness and the familiar shapes of the forest, yet the sensation of being watched persisted. Shrugging it off as paranoia, I returned to my tent, zipping it up tightly behind me. Sleep came slowly, as every rustle and snap outside seemed amplified in the silent night. Finally, exhaustion claimed me, and I drifted off. I awoke to an unnatural silence. The usual night sounds had ceased entirely. No wind, no rustling leaves, nothing. My heart pounded as I lay there, straining to hear anything. Then, there it was. A soft, almost rhythmic scraping sound, like claws on the tree bark. I unzipped the tent just enough to peer out. My breath caught in my throat. There, on the edge of the clearing, stood a figure, tall, gaunt, and utterly wrong. Its limbs were elongated, too thin and too long, its movements jerky and unnatural. The moonlight revealed no details, only the silhouette of a nightmare. I wanted to scream, but fear choked the sound in my throat. The creature turned its head towards me, and I felt its eyes, though I couldn't see them, boring into me. My body trembled uncontrollably as I slowly zipped the tent back up, praying it hadn't seen me. The scraping sound grew louder, closer. I could hear its breath now, ragged and wet. My mind raced. What was it? Some urban legend come to life. A creature from a story meant to scare children. None of it made sense, but the terror was real. It stopped right outside my tent. I held my breath, every muscle tensed. The fabric of the tent rustled, as if something was running its fingers across it. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. Seconds felt like hours. Then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, the presence withdrew. The forest sounds slowly returned, and I realized I had been holding my breath. Gasping for air, I waited, not daring to move until the first light of dawn peeked through the trees. When I finally emerged, there were no signs of the creature, no evidence of the terror I had faced. I packed up my camp with shaking hands, refusing to spend another moment in that cursed place. I never spoke of what I saw. Who would believe me? But the memory haunts me, and every night, in the quiet moments before sleep, I hear that scraping sound and wonder if it's still out there, watching, waiting. When I was a boy, my friends and I loved camping in the forest behind my grandmother's house. It was a dense, shadowy place, filled with the creaks and whispers of ancient trees. Under the supervision of our parents, we would set up our tents far enough away to feel the thrill of independence, but close enough to the house for safety. There was one place, though, that even the bravest among us dared not approach: the old well. Legend had it that the well was haunted by an apparition known as the Children's Keeper. The story went that many years ago, a tragic accident had claimed the lives of several children who had been playing near the well. Since then, their spirits, guided by the keeper, lured other children to join them in their watery grave. One cool autumn night, we gathered around our campfire, the flickering flames casting eerie shadows on our faces. We had heard the stories 100 times, but that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the wind howling through the trees, or the way the darkness seemed to press in on us. But the legend of the Children's Keeper seemed more real than ever. "I dare you to go to the well," Tommy whispered, his voice trembling slightly. My heart pounded. I wanted to prove my bravery, but the thought of the well sent chills down my spine. "Fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll go." Armed with a flashlight, I crept towards the well, the cold night air biting at my skin. The others followed at a distance, their faces pale in the dim light. The well stood like a dark sentinel, its stone walls covered in moss and grime. As I approached, the air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over me. I peered over the edge, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The water at the bottom was black and still, reflecting the light like a mirror. Suddenly, a face appeared in the water, pale, with hollow eyes staring back at me. I stumbled back, my scream catching in my throat. Before I could react, a hand, cold and wet, grabbed my ankle, pulling me towards the well. I fought desperately, kicking and thrashing, but the grip was relentless. The ghostly figure began to emerge, its ghastly form becoming clearer in the light. My friends rushed forward. There were screams echoing in the night, and together we managed to break free and run back to the safety of our campsite. We never spoke of that night again. The well remains a dark memory, a place of forgotten nightmares. Even now, as an adult, the thought of that cold, unyielding grip sends shivers down my spine. The legend of the Children's Keeper lives on, a warning to all who dare to venture too close to the haunted well. We always loved hiking, my girlfriend Lily and I. It was our escape from the hustle of everyday life. That weekend, we decided to explore a new trail deep within the Whispering Pines forest, known for its beauty and seclusion. We set off early, the sun casting long shadows through the trees. As the hours passed, we realized we had strayed far from the marked path. The dense canopy above obscured the sky, and the once inviting forest became a labyrinth of towering pines and tangled underbrush. The unease crept in slowly, a gnawing fear that we were truly lost. The light began to fade, and the forest took on a sinister air. In our desperation to find a way out, we stumbled upon an old, decrepit village. The buildings were rotting husks, overgrown with vines and moss. It felt like stepping back in time, to a place long forgotten by the world. "This place gives me the creeps," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, feeling the same chill. There was something off, something deeply wrong about the village. As we walked through the narrow, winding streets, we saw shadows moving in the windows of the abandoned houses. At first, we thought it was our minds playing tricks, but the shadows seemed deliberate, almost sentient. We heard whispers, faint and indistinct, like the village itself was alive and trying to communicate. In the center of the village stood an old well, its stone walls covered in strange, ancient ruins. As we approached, the air grew colder. Lily peered over the edge and gasped, stumbling back. "I saw something down there," she said, her face pale. "Something moving." A low guttural growl echoed from the depths of the well, sending a jolt of terror through us. We ran, our footsteps echoing through the empty streets, the whispers growing louder, more urgent. The village seemed to twist and shift around us, making it hard to find our way out. Finally, we broke free from the village's grasp, bursting through the tree line and onto a highway. Gasping for breath, we flagged down a passing car, the driver eyeing us warily as we babbled about the village and the things we had seen. We never went back to Whispering Pines. The memories of that day still haunt us, and sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear the whispers and see the shadows, wondering if we ever truly escaped. This story is about a bad experience I had while camping on the beach with my boyfriend. We thought it would be a nice idea to camp on the beach instead of staying at a hotel. I had always wanted to sleep while hearing the waves hit the shore, see the night sky whenever I wanted, and just live this experience at least once in my life. We planned to stay in our tent for a week. The area had public restrooms with showers and nearby restaurants, so hygiene and hunger weren't issues. We bought all of the supplies we needed: a 2-person blackout tent, an inflatable mattress, a first aid kit, lanterns for the tent, etc. The first few nights went smoothly. We enjoyed every moment. We always took all our valuables with us in backpacks in case anything happened to our tent: phones, chargers, wallets, etc. We weren't the only campers in the area. There were plenty of other people, including singles, couples, and even families. Some behaved badly, but it didn't bother us at first. At night, we occasionally heard people laughing, partying, dancing, listening to music, smoking weed, taking drugs, or drinking heavily. We didn't mind since no one had bothered us for the first 4 days and nights. People were just having fun. One night, we stayed out later than usual, around 1 a.m., wandering the lively streets, listening to street performers, eating out, and such. At one street performance, we noticed a middle-aged woman dancing completely naked in the middle of the crowded street. She was clearly affected by alcohol and/or drugs. She was incoherent, randomly flirting with people, and exposing herself while dancing to the music, despite the discomfort of the musician and passers-by. We didn't pay much attention and decided to head back to our tent to have a drink in silence while watching the stars and falling asleep to the sounds of the ocean. As we drank, we heard a woman shouting in the distance. It was the same woman we had seen earlier, but she wasn't alone. She had friends with her, 2 men and 2 women. They had a camp set up on the same beach, a few tents away from us, but close enough that we could hear and see them. They lit a fire on the beach and continued to drink, smoke, and dance around it. The woman was still naked, but now wore a see-through skirt. She went into the ocean for what seemed like an eternity. I remember thinking, how is she not cold? The water must be freezing. My boyfriend shrugged and told me not to be bothered. He said if we didn't engage with them, they wouldn't annoy us. So I did as told, but I always felt as if I was being watched. We decided to sleep, leaving the tent partially open with just the mosquito cover zipped so air could circulate and the morning sun could wake us early. I don't recall how long I had been sleeping, but I was awoken by footsteps circling our tent and a woman's voice humming softly. The tent wasn't very thick, so I could hear everything outside. I was too afraid to look out or even move, not wanting to indicate that I noticed their presence. I lay still, looking outside through the mosquito cover. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped above my head, and the voice whispered, "Don't be afraid. I only want to sing you a lullaby." Then the footsteps began circling the tent again. I saw her feet in front of our tent, noticing the familiar long, see-through skirt blowing behind her. The next morning, we packed up our tent and moved to a different area of the beach, as far away as possible from that woman and her friends. I'm not a big believer in ghosts or anything superstitious, but something strange happened when I was about 10 years old. I was on vacation with my family and relatives in the Philippines. Many old folks there have creepy, superstitious beliefs. My cousin and I decided to walk around the beach at night. It was quiet and calming. The beach resort had a strict rule against swimming at night for safety reasons, as there were no lifeguards past 6 p.m. One thing that bothered me was when my mom was talking to the resort owner. The owner looked agitated and told my mom that something bad was about to happen. At first, I thought it was just a way to keep guests in line. Later that night, another family arrived for their vacation. While checking in, the kids were excited and running around, eager to swim. It was already 5 p.m., and my mom asked me and my cousins to take a shower and prepare for dinner. So we did. After dinner, my cousin and I decided to walk around and look for starfish that had washed up on the shore. There was a bridge leading to the ocean that looked like a pier, but was empty. As we walked under it, my cousin froze and swore she saw a faceless little girl sitting alone under the bridge. At first, I thought she was joking, but she insisted that the girl was there. Creeped out, we walked back to the resort. On our way back, we saw people diving into the water, seemingly swimming. I suddenly remembered the resort's rule against swimming past 6 p.m. As we got closer, we heard the other family yelling for help. My mom and my aunt ran towards us and hugged us tightly. Confused, we asked what had happened. They were just thankful we were safe, but explained that 3 kids from the other family had gone missing. They found one kid who had almost drowned, but survived. The other 2 were missing until the next morning, when they were found dead across the island. We then told our moms about what my cousin had seen the night before. They explained that the resort owner had told them about a young girl who had died when she fell from her dad's small boat and got her face shredded by the propeller. It's said that the girl, whom my cousin saw, has been taking children's lives every year on the anniversary of her death. I'm 20 years old now, and after that vacation, my cousin and I stopped talking to each other. She changed and always picked fights with me at family gatherings. This experience left a lasting impact on both of us, and the memory of that eerie night still haunts me.